What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Post-Gazette Steelers YouTube channel and podcast network. He's Ray Fittipaldo. I'm Noah Hiles. This show is presented to you by FanDuel, and it's also sponsored by our friends at Pella. There's no better place to get your windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella windows and doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give us a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Ray, it's a Victory Tuesday. We're talking about some good things, it feels like, or at least we'll talk about some good things and maybe some things that are good elsewhere. And I think that's where we can start off. There's some Steelers stuff to hit on, of course, but I want to start today's show talking about a former Steeler who put on a show Monday evening for the Dallas Cowboys. George Pickens has done it again. It feels like he has a huge game every primetime game. Monday night, he catches 9 passes for 144 yards and a touchdown. This season, Ray, he has 58 catches, which is 11th best in the National Football League. He has 908 yards receiving, which is second most in the NFL. And he has 7 touchdown catches, which is tied for third most in the NFL. It's a simple question, Ray. When you look at this Steelers offense, they have one primary receiver, a guy that they kind of struggle to get involved. The offense has been inconsistent. They're desperate for playmakers, especially splash playmakers. Did they make a mistake getting rid of George Pickens?
Well, let me put it to you this way, Noah. There is no one in that Steelers building, from the owner on down through the head coach, probably even the players, who are surprised at what George Pickens is doing. Mm-hmm. But those same people will also tell you that the situation with George remaining with the Steelers was also untenable. So it wouldn't have worked even if you still had him in the building. And I think it's important to note, he and George and CD Lamb did not start the game for the Cowboys on Monday night. Their head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, said they missed a few things. And I reported on George Pickens' entire career, Noah, and I can tell you, he also missed a few things in Pittsburgh, mainly meetings and even the starts of practices by coming in late. So it's nice that he's having a good season. The Cowboys are maybe trying to get back into the NFC playoff picture. We'll see what happens long-term for him, where he lands, if he sticks with the Cowboys or he goes somewhere else. But I will tell you, there is no one in the building who is regretting that decision, and most of all, the players inside that locker room.
And that's interesting, because if you look at the Steelers' history, especially under Mike Tomlin, they have notoriously, I think, got the most out of guys who created some headaches, right? I mean, you look at how all of these other guys, the Chase Claypools, the Antonio Browns, the Le'Veon Bells, how they fared after leaving Pittsburgh compared to what they did under Mike Tomlin. And in this setting here on the South Side, it seems like they're able to get the most out of these guys. And when you bring in a veteran quarterback like Rodgers, you bring in a guy like DK Metcalf, who has played with other talented receivers opposite of him. He's not a guy that needs to be the alpha of the room. It seems like he could play in a 2 wide receiver offense, right? It's interesting that even despite those additions, it was pretty much a given that, everyone was ready to get rid of him. Do you think, even in your opinion, I know you're saying what you are hearing from them, do you think if they really tried, they could have made this work?
No. And what I was going to bring up was, I just wonder, and, it would be great if we could have Mike Tomlin off the record, just, spitballing with us and what his true feelings are. I wonder deep down if he learned from the Le'Veon Bell and the Antonio Brown situations in many ways, because he allowed Antonio Brown to become the distraction that he was. Did Mike finally wise up and say, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again, because the AB situation by the end was really bad, and it really affected that 2018 football season. If you remember, Noah,
Yep.
I don't know if you do. They're down in New Orleans. AB has a great game. really a game they should have won. The referee stole it from them. But by losing that game, they kind of were on the fringe of the playoff picture. They come home the next week, AB's not dressed because they have the whole blow up at practice. Mike allowed it to get to that point. And I think in a different way, it was kind of the same thing with the Le'Veon Bell situation. He created an environment where Le'Veon Bell felt like he could hold out an entire season. And, the Steelers thought he was going to come back. Le'Veon called their bluff. And that also had a big play, a big factor in the way that 2018 season played out. So maybe Mike, when he was met with a similar player who did similar things, said, okay, I'm going to cut this off right now. I'm not going to let this guy get into year 4, 6, 8, 10, whatever it was with Antonio Brown. Le'Veon Bell was here for 6 years. I think Mike realized that after year 3, he couldn't fix George Pickens. So if he couldn't fix him, he might as well move on from him and then start over.
So that leads me to ask you this. Do you think they take players with the reputation George Pickens came into? I mean, because that's Mike Tomlin has been open about saying he enjoys those challenges. He says that's one of his favorite parts of coaching is trying to connect with those guys and get the most out of them. And to his credit, he tends to get, like we said, he tends to get more out of those types of guys, the guys who other teams kind of stray away from. He gets the most out of those players while they're here. Do you think that moving forward that Pickens kind of marks an end to that they're saying, you know what, hey, we're done doing this. And if it means we have to take someone with a little or with a lower ceiling, a little less upside, but we know what we're getting from them as far as off the field, showing up on time, not creating headaches for the rest of the team, that's the way they're going to go moving forward?
Yeah, and we do have to remember George Pickens was a Kevin Colbert pick, and I know Mike does have a lot of influence on the draft process, and Mike is very involved. He was at Georgia. He got to know George well. He thought he could help him. I don't think it's to that point where, even though it's a new regime, and certainly Andy and Omar have their way of doing things, character is a big part of the draft process for them. They want good character guys, good people, as well as good players. I think with the situation with Mike there and George Pickens, I wouldn't say that it's going to put an end to Mike taking chances on players. I would just tell you this. George was so unique, and I think in many ways he was worse than Antonio Brown, that Mike just didn't want to deal with it any longer. So I think George was that much of an outlier. And in this one season with Dallas, where he might end up leading the NFL in receiving, his agent and his family members can say, hey, just behave for 9 months. You'll get this monster contract, and then he'll probably go back to being who he was all along. He's still being that guy. The Cowboys just gave him a little slap on the wrist. If Brian Schottenheimer was serious about disciplining those guys, he wouldn't have kept them out for one series, right? He would have kept them out for a half, if he thought it was serious enough, maybe a game, but he didn't do that. So, really what Schottenheimer did was more for show than anything else. So I still think George is that guy. I think he's always going to be that guy. And like I said, my feelings, I think the Steelers made the right move, but I know the feelings inside that building, they are still convinced, even though Pickens is doing what he's doing, they are still convinced they made the right move as well.
Interesting stuff. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about another Steeler, a former teammate of George Pickens, both in college and on the Steelers. We're going to talk about Mount Washington, Darnell Washington, and what he has continued to contribute to the Steelers offense when we come back here on the Post-Gazette Steelers YouTube channel and podcast network. Back here on the Post-Gazette Steelers podcast network and YouTube channel, I am Noah Hiles. He is Ray Fittipaldo. The show is brought to you by Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 4 years, our firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Ray, the Steelers take on a red-hot Chicago Bears team, a team that can't seem to, this was a team that always lost these wild, crazy, close games for that last however many years, and now they're winning them all. The Steelers will travel to Chicago this weekend. FanDuel, our show's presenting sponsor, has them at +3. So they're a 3-point underdog heading into that one. They're looking to build off of their most dominant win of the season, a 22-point win over the Cincinnati Bengals. And I would say one of the stars of that victory, especially on the offensive side of the ball, was Darnell Washington, a guy who, I mean, I felt like some people were discussing if this guy should be a tackle in the offseason because of his size. And we heard all about this tight end room, the addition of Jonnu Smith, how they're going to get Freiermuth involved more. And this guy was kind of taking a back seat to all of that. Ray, is it safe to say he's been their best tight end this season?
No doubt. And I think the playing time reflects that, Noah.
Yeah.
Like there's a word that's thrown around nowadays in sports. He's a unicorn. Well, Darnell Washington is truly a unicorn. You do not see guys who are 6'7" and weigh over 300 pounds move on a football field the way that he does. You don't see guys like that display the hands that he has. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is completely comfortable throwing to that guy in any situation. And it's interesting how it kind of developed this season. The first couple of seasons, Darnell was more of like that extra tackle. And, they would throw to him once in a while, but it wasn't anything, more than a few targets a game. Now he's their featured tight end. He played 71% of the snaps in that game against the Bengals. He is still that extra blocker, that force in the run game. But as you saw on Sunday, you put the ball in his hands in the open field, he's going to do damage too. And he had a couple of highlight reel plays that are going to be playing on loop for quite some time. So they've done a really good job of developing him. And I don't know if you remember this, but he had some knee issues coming out of college. There was some question about whether he would ever get to a second contract. And because of that, he had like a first-round grade or a high second-round grade by a lot of the draft analysts, but he fell to the third round because of those health issues. And really the same thing happened with Peyton Wilson. Steelers have done a really good job of taking chances and their medical staff being right in the last couple of years. And we'll see if those guys do get the second contracts. And even if they don't, the production those guys have provided over 4 years will be well worth it anyway. But it's certainly trending that Darnell is going to get to a second contract, and he's going to do it as this team's number one tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you look at tight ends in today's NFL, and essentially a lot of these guys are like the freak athlete on the team, right? And Washington is that, but just in a different way. Rather than being, this 6'5", strong but like slim and athletic guy who can do a whole bunch of different things, he's your quintessential biggest guy on the little league football team. Where as long as you can get him to weigh in under the certain weight to where he's able to touch the ball and Pop Warner, you get him the ball and you just let the other team try to tackle him. And it's been an interesting development to see him become essentially what Spencer Anderson is now. Like that's what he was for the first couple of seasons. And to be their primary pass catcher at that position group is I think a credit to their development as well for the organization.
Yeah, and he's a throwback to what the old tight ends used to be. In college football now, there's something called the John Mackey Award. Yep. If you want to watch some old black and white highlights, or even those old color highlights of the Baltimore Colts, John Mackey was doing the same thing, just bulldozing people, a man among boys back in his day, Hall of Fame tight end. And it was interesting, like you mentioned the contrasts between the different types of tight ends. Now, I was watching the Dallas Raiders game last night. Brock Bowers, I forget how tall he was. He weighs 235 pounds. Darnell Washington is 305. He might even be heavier than 305. So it's such a different contrast. Brock Bowers is great in his own right. He is a mismatch, but the Steelers are finding ways to use Darnell Washington in really creative ways, and I think it's helped out their offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look. I don't know if there's a bigger mismatch when you can get a guy to the second level than him. I mean, it's the Bengals secondary. That's one thing. I mean, they've had trouble tackling anyone, that position group for that team. But you just look, I mean, how can you ask a safety who's 200 pounds to tackle someone of that size and that speed when they have momentum going? It's something that they've got to find ways to, I think, moving forward, find him on more like crossing routes to where he has momentum. The same way you kind of want to see DK Metcalf used a little bit more, where it's just get him the ball and go.
Yeah.
It's a crazy concept, but like, yeah, you got to find a way to get your 300-pound tight end in those situations as well, because no one person is really taking him down when he gets going. Ray, do you think we see him continue to get more usage as we move forward, or do you think that his production throughout the first half of the season, throughout these however many games, is going to create more eyeballs and then will eventually lead to more chances for Jonnu and Pat?
No, listen, I mean, opponents really haven't figured out how to stop him. So I think the Steelers should continue to lean into that. Now, that's unfortunate for Jonnu Smith, and it's certainly unfortunate for Pat Freiermuth, who is, we all know, playing on a big contract. Jonnu Smith played 35 snaps. I think Darnell was up like around 46. Jonnu 35, Pat Freiermuth 30. Okay, that's kind of the way it's been for most of the season, at least for the last month or 6 weeks, until since they kind of discovered that Washington was their guy. So it's not great news for Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth, but listen, it's a winning formula for the Steelers. I think there's a stat out there that anytime he plays more than 40 snaps, they have this ungodly record. I don't know if they're undefeated or, they have a very good record when he plays over 40 snaps, and he was over 40 snaps again against the Bengals. So he's a really effective football player. Arthur Smith is a tight end guy. He really favors Darnell Washington now. So yeah, I think that we'll continue to lean into that package. That's their best running package. That's where they get their most yards. And as we saw on Sunday, Noah, and just think about the way the NFL is being played in 2025. The Steelers have gone to this look the last 3 weeks. 2 high safety, keep everything in front of you, make teams drive the ball down the field. The best plays on Sunday were the dump offs to Darnell Washington. Those passes weren't more than 5 or 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. And when it wasn't Washington, it was dump offs to Kenneth Gainwell in the flat. So you either had mismatches like Kenneth Gainwell on linebackers, or you had Darnell Washington on defensive backs. So it was a great job by Arthur Smith in drawing that up. He really got some favorable mismatches, and they really took advantage against the Bengals. I know the Bengals stink. Their defense stinks at least, but they did a really good job of getting back on track after what was, I think we could all agree, a pretty bad game in Los Angeles the week before.
Absolutely. We'll see if they can continue that momentum against the Chicago Bears. They will head there Sunday. Ray will be there to cover it. We'll have you covered at the Post-Gazette. Check out all of our work at post-gazette.com. Check out our print product. We print every Thursday and Sunday. And keep tuning in here on the Post-Gazette Steelers YouTube channel and podcast network. He's Ray Fittipaldo. I'm Noah Hiles. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we'll keep you covered on this channel every day moving forward.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.